Okay, so I'm about to start up the second verse of the first song, and this one you should be able to noticeably tell the differences, but just in case that doesn't happen, I'm going to explain to you why the second verse, or the second go-around, is stronger and more fit for radio play than is the first verse. Okay, so bear with me for a sec. Hey, well, as a mud ball, we come. Earth moves past the tough calls and D-ball. It's the same old news. Half the love falls and we all fall. Where will you be? I'm saying, where will you be? Yeah. Well, it's interesting to hear about the world's two biggest fears. With the birth of many every year, surprise and never shifts of ears. And what was my reward, the end of all my seeking? People's two biggest fears, death and public speaking. It may be easy to just lock this, it's simply pointless and nonsense. But step back, taking the view, this life around us is enormous. And while you're spooning through your porch, you're not thinking of the torrents of flooding in New Orleans and what may just lie ahead for us. You see, being in a bubble is easy when life is comfortable. I love philosophy and blues, not too fond of Rubik's Cubes. But in other news, Seth Rogen, you're a funny dude. Starting writing Superbad at 13, not 22. Forget all the theatrics. Cheers to the mighty youth. Cheers to the mighty youth. Yeah. Alright, so there you go. That was the second verse of the first song. And hopefully you did notice some changes. But if that wasn't the case, I'm going to point them out for you right now. Okay, so in the second version, the hook is immediately clear. It's the first 3 to 4 lines of the entire song or the entire verse, and not only are they clear, you could actually go away humming that, you know? You could walk away with that, you know, as a mud ball we call Earth moves, but it really punches at the end where it's like, where will you be? Where will you be? So it's almost like, it's not an ultimatum, but it really just grabs you. It's getting the listener right away. It's like, where will you be? It's almost like Uncle Sam pointing at you saying, what are you going to do for America? But more importantly, it's very different sonically from the verse that I was rapping. You know, you can tell that the break between singing song, and rapping. So that's the first big part. You gotta have an immediate hook that is clear. You gotta have something that people go by. Whenever people listen to the radio, they don't listen to the verses. They don't usually quote the verses. People are subconsciously listening most of the time. They're focusing on the road, you know? So when they listen, they remember that chorus. They remember those lines, and it's usually not even the artist singing them, but it's somebody else helping out, and that's what brings all the difference. It brings something fresh and new. So the second thing, the target audience is made a lot clearer in this one. The target audience is teenagers and youth. And the ways I tried to achieve this was, you know, by putting in the Hurricane Katrina snippet with, the flooding in New Orleans. And Rubik's Cubes is usually something that adults don't play with. It's more of a teenage thing. I mean, if I was doing this rap song in Japan and they understood English pretty well in China, they would understand this completely. Rubik's Cubes is a part of teenage life in China and Japan. I realize that America, I don't know a lot of kids that play with Rubik's Cubes, but still, it's definitely something that is tethered to the youth. I put cheers to the mighty youth at the end. And that's a direct address right there. And it was more subtle, this next address. Where will you be? That question, where will you be? Like, that is really addressed towards the youth, because it's like, you are emerging, 18, 17, you're emerging into this world, and it's now up to you to do something. So what are you going to do? I mean, there are going to be things that happen every day. As the mud ball we call Earth moves, there are going to be things that happen. I mean, tough calls in T-ball, that's a common thing. But, you know, you're going to make it through, and you're going to have to realize, what is it that you're going to become? So it's really like a pump-up anthem. Like, what are you going to do? So I put in Seth Rogen and Superbad, and if any movie in 2010 or 2009 screams teenage humor, teenage guy humor, it's Superbad. Superbad, Pineapple Express, pretty much anything made by Seth Rogen is geared towards the young adult and the old teenager because it's hilarious. I mean, all the jokes in there catered for things that kids talk about my age all the time. So, and the last one was public speaking. And I know mostly you would get an image in your head of an adult public speaking, but still, we as teenagers have to do public speaking, and it's kind of nice to know that public speaking is one of the two biggest fears. I mean, if you don't know that, and now you're being told that by a rap song, you're not always inclined to believe a rap song. But for some reason, when we hear things in rap songs, because the person sounds so confident, we believe it to be true. And teenagers, that whole process of growing up as a teenager is just getting and collecting and gathering advice. So knowing that it's one of the world's two biggest fears, I mean, that's pretty significant because then you won't beat yourself up as much. So now, that is target audience. All that was just target audience. Just to recap, we made the hook clear and immediate. We now figured out who our target audience is. Now, what we needed to realize was there was fresh flow and there were variations on lines. You know, with like this and nonsense. And I mean, there were breaks in the flow, and that's really important sonically and musically because you're going to lose your listener giving them the same thing. It's the same as public speaking. If you can't use variety in your voice inflection, like when you're moving this way, that way, you're more inclined to listen to that right now because it's not something that you're used to hearing when I speak. So, with that said, this had a lot more voice and variety and voice inflection, and that makes all the difference when you're listening to rap songs because everybody these days thinks they can rap, but not everybody these days can use voice inflection the correct way. Not saying that I can, but not every rapper can use it in a way that is effective of getting their message across. And you also saw increases in speed with the New Orleans part. I mean, if you've forgotten, you can go back, or it's while you're spooning through your porch, you're not thinking of the torrents and the flooding in New Orleans. I mean, that is different from the rest of the piece because I don't go that fast in any part of the piece. So, and kind of like this is something that maybe you can interpret and you can listen to it over and over again if you'd like. But the last line sort of sounds like a chant, like cheers to the mighty youth, cheers to the mighty youth. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like that is important to have in your song. It's not like you need an anthem in your song, but it's nice to have something that takes it away from just being a song. We hear songs all day long. We're so desensitized to love songs. We're so desensitized to songs in general. So if you can bring something that is new, like an anthem, I mean, that's why Good Charlotte had rocks, lifestyles for the rich and the famous. That was an anthem, man. I mean, that's a great song. So that's the second version of the first song. I hope that you heard some new elements. I hope that you've understood through me what it takes to have a better song and something that will more likely appear on the radio rather than just some amateurish work. Okay? Cool.